This tutorial is all about business process flows, which you use to guide the user through a series of steps and stages from the start to the end of a process in a model-driven Power App or in Dynamics 365. I'm assuming here you've got a model-driven app. If you'd like to learn how to build one of those, go check out my other tutorial and then come right back here. In this tutorial, we're going to go through what a business process flow is and why you would use one, how to build one from start to finish, all of those stages and steps, and then we're going to go into some of the more advanced features of what you can do with business process flows. We're going to look at having multiple process flows on a table, assigning security roles and determining the order that they show up in. We're going to look at how you can have a business process flow that goes across more than one table in your database. Lots of stuff here on conditional branching and how to have different conditions in your business process flows. And finally, we're going to have a look at how you can trigger workflows, automations, and flows out of your process. If we haven't met before, my name's Lisa Crosby. I have a whole channel here of tutorials that help you get started with Power Platform and keep up to date with the latest features. Hit that like and subscribe button if this is your kind of thing. Let's get into it. Here we have a business process flow on the screen. I'm working in a model-driven app in this tutorial, which is all about campaign management and around managing marketing workflows, but you can use this in any kind of scenario. So you'll see what we've got here is a process flow that takes the user through the different stages of planning out that campaign and executing it. So we start with a planning stage, and then here are the steps that are underneath it. We nominate a campaign manager and the expected outcomes. And then we can move to the next stage where we put in some information about executing this particular campaign. We have a budget and an expected cost. And finally, we can go to the review stage where we need to complete a report. And you'll see as I go through there's different types of data in each of those steps. We can have things like yes or no columns. We can have lookups to other bits of information in the system. We can have text fields and so on. Lots of different options that you can work with there. You'll also find business process flows in Dynamics 365, and the example we're looking at here is Dynamics 365 Sales, Standard Opportunity Process, Qualify, Develop, Propose, Close, and the different steps that sit underneath each of those. And you'll see here there's a lot more going on than in my other nice simple example. So you can build business process flows that are quite complex with lots of stages and steps, or quite straightforward depending on your need. But the reason to use them is always about guiding the user through a series of stages and steps from something that goes from beginning to a logical conclusion, can really reduce the need for training. It's a form of on-screen guidance to get consistency in your process and guide the users where they're already working. Let's have a look at how we go about building this. So back to our scenario here with our marketing campaign management app. We've already got a business process flow in here for working through a standard campaign. Let's say I wanted a different one. Let's say we do different types of campaigns, and one of the things we work on is major videos, and I want a different process here to work on a video type of campaign. To work with this, we're starting in make.powerapps.com, which is always our home for everything, and we're actually working in the flows menu here. Now, when we build a business process flow, this is actually a capability that is part of Power Automate. So you can actually work directly from the Power Automate portal if you prefer, but if you're building a model-driven app, it's usually going to be easier to access it from here. I'm going to click here to business process flows to go into there, and you'll see there's the campaign one that I was already working on before, but we're going to add a new one here. A couple of simple steps to get started. The first thing we need to do is to give our flow a name. So we're going to call this one our video campaign flow. And then we need to choose which table it's going to be associated with on the screen there. So in this case, I'm going to put it against the campaign table. You'll see there it also gave it a schema name, that technical name. It automatically takes what you've put in the flow name and joins the characters together. You can give it another name if you prefer, but for now, good enough, and we're going to click create. All right, after a minute or so, you'll see this screen appear. What we have here is the experience of making our business process flow, and it's starting us off with a stage, and you can see there that it's assigned to the campaign table, which is where we put it. Now, this is a nice drag and drop interface. Over the side here, we have our components, and we're going to drag the different components across and build out the process flow. So to start with, we've got the campaign. When I click on that, you'll see what happens on the right-hand side there is it changes to show you the properties, and we can give it a name that is more useful than new stage. So in my video process here, I'm going to work through something nice and simple: plan, produce, complete. So we're going to call this one plan. I'm not going to use the category here, but this does give you the option to assign the different stages of your process to that qualify, develop, propose, close pipeline. So if you're building out a process where you want to be able to do some kind of pipeline reporting, you can align those stages with those pipeline stages and you will be able to do that report. It doesn't make sense in this context, so I'm just going to leave it out. Now, the trick, and I'm going to say this over and over again, you must remember, click the apply button. See what happens now? It's come up. If you just do that and don't click apply, you'll lose your work. So make sure you remember to do that each time. Now I'm going to drag my next component. I'm going to grab this stage and pop it in there. So we're going to go plan and then produce is our next one. So we'll just go in here and put in produce as our next name. Guess what? Apply. And then our final stage is going to be complete. So we just drag that across and again give it that name and apply. So there's our stages of the business process flow. So now let's add the data steps into our process flow. And you'll see here that when I click on data step, it comes up with which field or column. So this is still using some of the old language. Field and column mean the same thing. Which one do I want to choose? So you'll see I've got a list of all of the columns that exist on this data table. You do need to have built them beforehand. So trap for new players here. If you come in here and you haven't already created the fields that you want on your process flow, you will have to go back into your Power Apps solution and create those first. Let's assume you've already done that and you're all good. So I'm going to put in here my first data point. I'm going to choose the client, and you'll see when I choose that field, it automatically gives it the name there. Now, guess what we have to do? What are we doing? Apply. And now it's got the name over there and we're all good. I'm just going to keep this one nice and simple as an example to get started before we get into the more complex stuff. So now we've got another data step here for produce, and this is going to be a video. So we're going to put in the video producer and apply that. And then in the complete stage, let's pop in that one about having done a report in there and we will apply that. All right, I can save that. That's a nice simple business process flow. If that's all you need to do, you're good. And I can add additional data steps in here as well. So let's say I wanted to put something in here about the budget. I can go back to components. So just remember on the right hand side here, we've got components and properties in two little tabs. Components, if I want to add another data step here, I can drag, and you'll see as soon as I start to drag, these little plus buttons appear, which means I can put it above or below the one that I had there before. And again, I can just choose that and pop our budget in there and apply, and we're good. So you can come back and add extra things in there, and you can have multiple steps inside each stage. Next thing is, let's make something mandatory. So let's say I have the, well, while we're here on the budget one, there's a little button here called required. If I tick that, again with the apply, what will happen now is that will become a stage gate, which means that I can't move past that stage in the process unless that particular data point has been filled in. So that's how you can enable stage gating on your process. Let's do a save here, and then what happens is we need to validate, make sure that it's following all the rules of what we need in our business process flow. We haven't created anything with an error, and then I can go ahead and activate it. Now, before I do that, I'm going to show you some other things here around how we work with multiple process flows on the one table, because you'll remember if I go back into my app here that we've already got on campaign this standard campaign process flow, and we're adding another one in here. So we have this option here to say order process flow, and what this does is brings up a list of what's already there. So we've got that campaign one and this one I've got now, and I might choose to say let's put this one at the top. I can bump it up the order and say that's actually going to be the first one, or pop it there, and for now I'm going to leave it as the second option. The other thing we can do here is apply the security roles to decide who has access to this. So we can start by saying, you know, we want everyone to have it. We can, you know, select all, or you could go in and say, you know, we only want certain roles to do this. So let's say we had a video producing group within our marketing team and we only want them to have access to that. We can do that. And what that means is that within your process flows, then the user experience experience, when they're logged in, they will see in the order that you determined the ones they have access to. All right, so there's 2 steps now to get this into your app. The first one here is to activate it. Now, sometimes this little message doesn't disappear from the screen. If you find this sits here for more than 30 seconds or so, just give it a refresh and you'll find that it's okay. It's nothing wrong with the actual processing in the background. It's just that the message doesn't disappear. There we go. It's taking a little while. We'll give it a minute. And I'll give that a refresh just to see where we're at on the screen here. You'll know it's worked when activate becomes deactivate. And there we go. It's come up now. You can see that the activate has gone and the deactivate is back again. Last step now is we need to add it into the model-driven app. So we've created that business process flow, but we haven't actually kind of put it as a component inside the app. So now I'm going to go back to my Power Apps Maker experience. I'm going to go into my solution and I will find the solution that I've been working in. More on solutions in my model-driven apps tutorial if that's something that you haven't come across before. And I'm going to add that business process flow into my solution to start with. You can't build it in the solution. You need to build it the way I've shown you and then bring it in. So it exists here as a process. So we're going to add an existing process and I'm going to find that one down the bottom there. There's my video campaign flow and add it in. And now I need to add it to my app. So I'm going to go into my campaign management app here and open that for editing. And then over here, you'll see here is the list of business process flows. And where I go in there, you'll see campaign is checked, but I need to now add video campaign flow and I can save that and I can publish that. And now if I go back into my app and give it a refresh, we'll see that that option is in there. So if I have a look at this one that I've generated already, there's a process bar at the top here, which allows me to switch process. And if you've got more than one process in there, it means that you can switch it. So now I'll have a choice of being able to switch to the video campaign flow if that's what I wanted to do. And we will see, here we go, plan, produce, complete. This is what we just built. There's my client. We can go through. I'm in produce and I've got a budget of $5,000. I can look up my video producer. Let me show you what happens if I don't put that in and I want to move it across. There's my stage gating budget. Must be filled in and I can't go any further. Now let's have a look at another way of doing this, which is multiple processes are the right way to do it sometimes, but other times you would prefer to have conditional branching in there so that you can say if this is a video type of content, then we want a different branch to appear rather than having a whole flow. So let's have a look at how we make that. So back in our Power Apps Maker portal, we are going to go into flows and again, select business process flows. Now, in this case, I'm actually going to create something that goes across 2 different data tables as well as showing you some conditional branching. So we're really going to step it up a couple of notches here. I'm going to create new, and this one I'm going to call idea to campaign. So what I've got going on in my model-driven app here is an idea that can come through. Here's an idea for something, and then it has to go through a process there before it gets approved to say, yeah, let's make that a campaign. So let's have a look at how that works. I'm going to build this one now on the data table called campaign idea, and that's where we start from. So if you're building across more than one table, when you do that create stage, choose the table where it's starting from. So you'll see here we've got our new stage on that campaign idea table. I'm going to click on that, go into my properties, and we are going to call this stage idea and apply that. Now, to work across tables, it's actually quite easy. We do exactly the same thing we did before. We drag another stage in here, and this is going to be my planning stage, but this one is actually on the entity or table, again, old language here, same kind of thing, campaign, and apply that. So you'll see here now we've gone from the idea on campaign idea through to the plan on the campaign. When I add my data steps in here, you'll see I have different choices. So when I'm working on the idea table, I have the things that are part of the idea table. So I'm going to put some things in here. We're going to link up the client, and let's apply that. And let's add a couple more in here so we can see how this starts to flesh out. I'm also going to put in the time frame, and I will add campaign type. Oops. If you don't drag it to the right spot, just have another go. There we go. Let's put in a campaign type and apply that. So that's building that out with a few more different steps in there. When I go in here and choose my data step, you'll see now this is giving me the options related to campaign. So when you choose which table it's on, it gives you the fields or columns that are related to that table. So part of my plan here, I'm going to put in who is the campaign manager. I am going to put in the budget. I'll add that one in there. Choose budget, and also our estimated cost, because I'm going to do something cool with formulas in a moment that's going to use these two numbers to make a comparison and determine what happens next in the process. It's going to get exciting. All right, and apply that. There we go. And now let's add in a review and publish stage to this. So we'll pop this one in here, call this one review. And we can add a publish stage. You'll see I can kind of do this a little bit on the fly. It's good if you've got the plan for what you're doing, but I can build stages and add the steps and then add the other stages in here and kind of do it as it comes to me. We'll put in the publish stage there, apply. I always forget to click that. We'll pop this one in here. This is going to be our publication date. And then for our review stage, we will pop our expected outcomes in there. All right. Let's save that and we're good. So that's now worked across two different data tables. Let's add some conditions in here now. So when we're adding conditional branching, what we're going to do is choose a component in here and drag a condition. So as soon as I start to drag, you'll see all those plus things come up and we're going to pop that in there. Now I tend to prefer to build the conditions kind of as I go, rather than trying to put them in after the fact. There we go, dragged it to the right spot. So what you need to do here, this is just a bit of a trick. If you're coming back, if you've saved your process and you're putting it in, first thing I want you to do when you drag that in is to click save, because then it starts to put in a couple of other things on the screen here. Now this is confusing at first, but let me take you through it so that you get what's going on. A condition must have a stage that applies if it's true. You can also optionally have something that's negative. So what this is setting up is to say, if this condition is true, then this stage of the process will appear. So the experience on the user interface will be that appears or disappears depending on whether this is true or not. And you can have more than one in there. I can do what I was doing before and add more stages in here. But you'll see at first, because I had in here already plan and review, it's added another one in there. So if you meant for the review stage to be in there, just have to think about the order in which you're doing these things, because once you add that condition, what it does is puts in that extra stage. It's also why I suggest hitting that save button as soon as you put the condition in there, so that you remember that you've got that extra stage popped up in there. I'm going to make this one an approval stage. So we're going to call this one approval. And what we're going to do is have something here that says if a certain thing is true, then approval is required before we go to the review stage. So let's have a look at this. We can say if the budget is over $10,000, then we need approval. Now, what we need to do is always work with something that was in the previous stage. So I can do that because in this one, I have got my budget, so I can have my condition based on that. So if I go into my condition here, you'll see that there are different things that I can work with. You can choose which field or column from the previous step is going to be used in the condition. Now, depending on what type of data this is, will depend on the options you've got. So you'll see that if I've got something like a date, I can do equals, greater than, less than, and so on. Same with a currency. I'm going to be working with budget here. This will be greater than, less than. The options are slightly different there than what we saw with the date. We can also, if we have a look at something like campaign type, so campaign type is a drop down and option list, then you'll see that it's different because you can't sort of have a greater than or less than a list of options, so those are different there. So just be mindful of the data types you're working with in figuring out those conditions, and if you can't see an option there, chances are you've got the wrong thing. So if I go into budget and I want to say the budget is greater than or equal to, now I can choose a couple of other things. I can say it's greater than or equal to a value, so we could just say $10,000 there. Greater than or equal to $10,000, it's true. I could say if it is greater than some other field value. So we could say if the budget is, for instance, greater than or equal to, actually let me do it the other way around. We've got an estimated cost in here. So what if our estimated cost is greater than or equal to the budget? In other words, we had a budget and we're exceeding it, that might need approval. So if the estimated cost is greater than or equal to, and instead of putting a value in here, I'm going to put in budget. So if our estimated cost is greater than or equal to the budget, then we need approval. And we can also do a formula if you wanted to do something here. So we could go in here and say, instead of a field, we want to build a formula. So it could be the budget plus a value. So that value could be, let's say it's more than, $5,000. Oops, that's too many zeros. I think if it's more than $5,000 over. So not highly sophisticated in terms of the formulas and things, but you could do that. So we're going to say here, and I'll leave it with this, if our estimated cost is more than $5,000 over budget, then that will be true. And once I'm happy with that, I can click apply. So let's have a look at how we can go another step further with this and use that option set of the campaign type and have some more of these nested conditions. So let's go over here and let's add another stage in here. So let's say we need to kind of figure out who needs to be assigned some responsibility along the way here. So we'll call this one assign. So you'll see you can sort of come back and add stages in later if you want to and apply that. And what we're going to do here is put in a step which is to figure out the campaign type so that we can use that in the next stage as well. So let's pop another condition in here, and we're going to have something different pop up depending on the type of campaign. Save it so that we see what happens there. So the first thing we're going to do is check if this is a video. So this is what we're trying to do before, where we can say, is the campaign type equal to video? Apply. That's true, then this stage is going to be the video stage. And we're going to add a data step in there, which is our video producer, which is the one that we were working with before. So we have our, we've got two in there. We've got our studio booked and we have got our video producer, and apply. With me so far? So we've added a condition. We've got, this is going to be, now you see I didn't click apply there, we have to go back and do that. If you find yourself with that new stage, it means you've missed that button. I do that all the time. So condition, if this is a video campaign, it's going to pop that up. If it's not, let's check for something else. So let's add another condition in here and let's check if it's a social campaign. So I've got video, social and blog as my three in here. So we're going to say this condition is the campaign type equal to social. Now, again, save it and that will pop that one up. And we're going to say if that's true, we will add our social media manager in there. You'll see when you save it sort of goes back, so you have to scroll back along. We'll call this one social and apply that. And let's add a data step in there, which is our social channel. That'll do. All right. And one last step now. Otherwise, if it is a blog, so we've got another condition. So you see how we're starting to nest these down? If this one is campaign type is equal to blog, apply that. Then we will add another stage. And this one is going to be called blog. And the data step there. Now again, you can be putting heaps of data steps in, but I think you get the idea from one or two each time. That one can be the publication date, and we're good. Now the other thing you want to do is, I've given my stage names, nice names, but this new condition isn't terribly good. So let's call this one video, apply, social. So now if I'm coming back and looking at this process, then I've got a fighting chance of what is going on. You don't see those condition names on the front end of the user interface, but it's much better if you do that so that you remember what's going on. All right, let's give this a whirl now. We're going to click save and validate and make sure that I haven't done anything that it can't cope with. Here we go. So if you do make an error, you will find that there's an error in the process, and then if you scroll back, you'll be able to see where it is. So there's an error on this stage. Let's have a look. No data step. So that's a requirement. So there you go. That's what it looks like. So we're going to go in here and let's put in our approval status in there because I forgot to do that before. Let's try again. you reckon I did that on purpose? And validation successful, all green, all happy, and we activate. Now we could do the same thing as we did before with the process flow order and the security roles and so on. I'm going to go and add that to my model driven app, and I will be right back and I'll show you the finished product. I'm going to start this time from a different data table, which is called campaign ideas. So we're going to take it from there and move it across to becoming a campaign to work on. Now, one thing to mention is that when you've created a business process flow, it doesn't automatically retrospectively apply back to everything you've already done. So if I go into any of these ideas that I've got here, you'll find there isn't a business process flow in there because we've previously created them. You can add it, but it doesn't automatically go back and put them in. So just if you can't find it, that's what's going on. So let's add a new campaign idea here. So let's say we're working on a client who wants Instagram Reels, and you'll see here I've got my business process flow across the top, and it's locked down a bit like that lead to opportunity process we looked at in sales right back at the start. Idea to campaign is locked because that's in this data table, but we can't go across to the next one until we've got that one created. So let's make this one a social campaign, and my client is Fourth Coffee and my time frame is this month. I've got descriptions and goals and things in there. I won't go through the data entry. Now I can have a look at the business process flow here. I need to save the record before the action of being able to move across is going to take place. So we save that, we've got our title here, and now when I go in here, we can see we have the next stage button. Now this behaves slightly differently from when it's on the one data table, because what it does is gets us to create a record on the next data table that's related back to this one. A whole other thing, you can create workflows and automations to do this in a more automated fashion, but here it is as we are now. So we can say, let's create a new one, and that will take us through on that same business process flow now. So the concept here is that we've gone from an idea through to a campaign, and this one is going to be the Instagram Reels campaign. And we will save that, and then on we can go with all of those things. Now we can also do cleverer things here, mapping across the campaign type and things, a bit beyond what I want to show you for the business process flow. So the thing here was about having the approval and the assign stages and whether they're required or not. So let's have a look at what that experience is like. Where did we land? We said if the estimated cost was $5,000 higher than the budget, so let's say our budget is $10,000 and our estimated cost is $20,000, then we need this approval. If I come in here and change this and say the estimated cost is only $10,000, you'll see that the approval stage disappears from the business process flow. Now, depending on how you set this up, sometimes it will be there and appear or disappear, but in this case, the way that I've set it up is that it removes the need for that. So because it didn't meet that rule, that's a no, that's gone. So now we can move on to the next stage. We had here the idea of assigning something across, and remember we had the difference between video, social, and blog in the drop down. So I'm going to go in here and say that this is social, and then my social option pops up, which is to choose the social channel, just to prove that this is working. If this had been a video, you'll see there that pops up with the video option, which was the studio booked and the video producer, or finally blog, and we have the blog stage there. So that's our business process flow in action with all of the conditional branching. So back in our business process flow designer here, there is one last thing I want to show you, which is how you can use automation. You can trigger workflows and cloud flows out of your business process flow. So this allows you to do things like requesting approval processes, notifications, creating other records in the system. You've got two tools at your disposal here. One of them is Dynamics 365 Workflows. I'm going to come back to that one in a moment. And the first one I'm going to show you here is working with a cloud flow in Power Automate. Now, most important thing here is that you need to create the cloud flow in your solution. So you've seen as I've been working through things here, I've been putting components in my solution. My model-driven apps tutorial has a better explanation of that if you want to go further there. So I'm going to switch across to the full Power Automate experience, and I've navigated here to solutions, and the one that I'm working in is called marketing workflow. Now I'm going to do a very basic flow here, which is to create a new cloud flow. And what we need to do is the trigger is actually going to be Dataverse, and it's going to be the trigger that's related to that business process flow, which allows us to pull it in here. You can actually have other triggers and pull them in, but I'm going to show you this particular way of doing it because it allows you to have a button on your business process flow that says run flow, which is a really good way of doing it. So I'm going to choose the Microsoft Dataverse connector. That's front and center for me because I use it all the time. And my trigger is going to be when a flow step is run from a business process flow. I'm going to go through here, and the next step I'm going to do is to work with the approval. So I want to trigger an approval as part of that flow. So we just find the approvals. We'll start and wait for an approval, and then I can go ahead and put whatever I want in that approval flow. So we're going to put in here a first to respond approval. I won't go into the details of approvals here. So we'll just call this one a campaign approval, and we can assign it to anyone dynamically in the system. I'm just going to put it in to myself. And you can put other details in there as well, but not really the point of what we're doing here. I'm going to call this campaign approval request. Save it. Now I've created that inside the solution. And as I said, it's really important that it needs to be inside the solution in order to bring it into your business process flow. All right, so once it's saved, we're going to go back over to our campaign. Let's just give this a refresh so that it picks up those changes. And what I'm going to do is go into my campaign approval step here, open this up, and I'm going to bring this flow step, which is currently in preview, in as a step there. And now I can go in and select a flow, and there's the one that I've just created. So you'll only see it on the list if you've put it in the solution. We're going to call this request approval. And as always, apply. All right, so that's how we can bring the flow step in. The other thing I'm going to show you is how we can bring a Dynamics 365 workflow in. Now, this is using an older part of the system here with creating workflows, but it's the thing that we need to do to use this part of it. And what we need to do is create something that's called an on-demand process. I won't go through the full build of this, but there's plenty of material out there if you want to get further into it. But it must be an on-demand workflow, which means the trigger is something that's happening in the process. And all this is doing is creating an email. This is basically a notification to say something is ready for you to review. So whatever it is your process is there, make sure it's set up as an on-demand process. And I'm going to put this as part of our review stage. So we'll go across here to the components. I'm going to this time open this up and bring a workflow in. So we'll pop that in there. And again, it asks us to find the workflow, and the only options we'll see there are the ones that are on demand. So we've got that notification. We choose the trigger. So is it happening on stage entry or stage exit? I'm going to have it on stage entry. So once we get in, we click on that process flow and we go through, it will trigger that workflow. Just be careful on stage exit. You can't use it on exit of the last stage of the process because it doesn't actually exit the process. So just watch out for that one. We will apply. And now this process is already activated. We don't need to go through that whole save and activate. We just need to update for it to pick up those changes. And now let's go and see that in action. All right, now back in our model-driven app, let's go in and create a new campaign idea. So this one is going to be a studio video, and this one is a video campaign, and it is for City Power and Light. And we will save that one and take that one through the process to the next one. We're going to create our campaign record here again, and this is the studio. All right. So we're in our planning stage. We had in our approval stage, so we're going to put in our budget as that much, $11,000, and let's move it through. Now we needed to get to our approval stage. We needed the cost to be higher than that, didn't we? So we're going to go $20,000 in there, and now we've got our approval. So here we go. There's our flow button that we had in there. So that, if I click that, will actually go ahead and trigger it. So using that flow step allows you to have that manual control. You can click a button and make it happen. And that will prompt you to go ahead and continue with running the flow. The first time you'll get that experience of signing in. Normally you'll just go straight to this screen and say, run the flow, and off we go. If you prefer to automate it, we're going to use the workflows like we saw earlier on exit and entry. So we go to the next stage, which is the review stage. I didn't even see that a workflow was triggered there because that's happening entirely in the background, but that has done that, and different experience there. So you can bring those automations into your workflows either with that kind of button click experience with the Cloudflow or with an automated workflow triggering in the background on entry to or exit from a stage. So that's it for business process flows. We've had a look at a whole heap of things there, concept of how we would use them, how to build them. We've gone into some more complex things around how to have multiple business process flows going across multiple tables, having workflows and flows fire off those things, and a whole bunch of stuff about conditional branching. I hope that's been helpful for you. Thanks for watching.